coincidence that this virus started not up in some remote mountain village with caves full of bats, but rather in downtown Wuhan, a city larger than New York, just a few blocks up the road from labs that was researching bat-based coronaviruses.
Why isn't President Biden pushing for more access, more information to get to the bottom of exactly what happened?
We are. And we have repeatedly called for the WHO to support an expert-driven evaluation of the pandemic's origins that is free from interference or politicization.
The origins of the coronavirus, now front and center. A Wall Street Journal story about 3 researchers in the Wuhan lab going to the hospital, actually, with illness that looked a lot like the coronavirus in the hospital. Early reporting on this was discounted, called conspiracy theories. We just want to play something from this show, April 2020. There is a growing belief that the COVID-19 virus originated in the Wuhan lab, not as a bioweapon, but as China's effort to find and deal with viruses to show the world China was as good as or better than the U.S. on that front. It's believed that the virus was bat to human, and then the human, patient 0, worked at the lab, went into the population in Wuhan, and the virus quickly spread from there. Went on in that reporting to say the one thing that U.S. officials definitively knew is that China worked overtime to cover up after the virus was out. In fact, changing travel patterns and also getting rid of evidence. That's April 2020. Let's bring in our panel. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume. Bill Bennett, former education secretary, host of the Bill Bennett Show podcast. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. And Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Brit, let me start with you. Your thoughts on where we are on this origin story.
Well, it's striking to hear Jen Psaki say that the Biden administration is really pushing to get more information about this by pressing the WHO, whose record on this whole issue has been appallingly bad and was one of the leaders in dismissing the theory that the virus that could have emanated from that Wuhan lab. Pushing the WHO to do an open investigation. I don't think that's a serious comment and shouldn't be taken seriously. What's been so striking about this, as you mentioned, Brett, is not just the fact, but look, we don't know what happened here, and we haven't known. But the Wuhan lab theory was always plausible. At least it's plausible as the theory that this somehow, jumped from bat to pangolin to human out of a meat market or a wet market. So the dismissal of that idea that it came from the lab by so many news organizations was another in the long line of recent media failures.
Not only news organizations, but also experts. We have a kind of an evolution from Dr. Anthony Fauci, what he said back then and what he's saying now.
If you look at the genomic sequences of the viruses that are in bats in the wild, it's strikingly similar to the sequences that you have found now in people who have been infected with the original wild-type virus.
Are you still confident that it developed naturally?
No, actually, no, I'm not convinced about that. I think that we should continue to investigate what went on in China until we find out, to the best of our ability, exactly what happened.
Mara, much different, obviously, take there. Things evolve. Yeah. We learn more. But it was dismissed at the beginning.
Right, it was dismissed. Now it sounds like it's possible that it was a bat virus, but it was a bat virus in a laboratory that infected a human being. And this is a big embarrassment if this is the case for China, because it would mean that their protocols in the lab didn't protect people who worked there from getting these viruses. And I think that the Biden administration sounds like they want to let the WHO look into this, but it's important that the true origins of the pandemic be released. We're not saying that China developed this as a biological weapon, as some crazy theories had it in the original, but we want to know how it started, because that would help us prevent this from happening in the future.
We should point out, we're going to try to get Bill Bennett back. I don't think it was China that took him out there, but Byron, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this was a failure of some official sources, like Dr. Fauci, but there were others who were suggesting there might be some validity to this lab leak hypothesis, at least circumstantial evidence supporting it. I mean, the Trump State Department, under Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, reported intelligence that some people at the lab had gotten sick in November of 2019, about the time we would think that coronavirus was beginning. They had coronavirus-like symptoms, and they were hospitalized. And yet, as Britt suggested, there was contempt and mockery, and in some cases suppression of this lab hypothesis. Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican senator from Arkansas, mentioned the hypothesis, and it was quickly shot down by the New York Times as if he were kind of a wild conspiracy theorist. So one lesson from this, completely apart from the story of coronavirus, is that we shouldn't be suppressing information when we don't know all the facts.
Okay, you mentioned former Secretary Pompeo. He was on our air today.
The Chinese Communist Party knows what happened here. They know who patient zero was. They know precisely where this began. These three individuals who became sick, the symptoms were consistent with what someone would get to be symptomatic of if they had COVID-19.
We know for a fact that the Chinese Communist Party has been deliberately covering up a transparent and thorough investigation from the start. We know the WHO has been corrupted by the Chinese Communist Party, and even the head of the WHO, Dr. Tedros, looked at the initial report that got released in March and said, actually, we need to investigate the lab leak.
All right, we're back with Bill Bennett now. Bill, your thoughts on where we are here?
Well, look, there's a reason that this has been obscured and not looked into, and that's the 800-pound gorilla known as Donald Trump. If Donald Trump said this is what he suspected, then this entire administration is going to be disposed to say the opposite. It's the inversion theory. It was in a Star Trek or a Twilight Zone a long time ago. You go in the machine one way, you come out the reverse. If Donald Trump said it, we have to do the reverse and believe the reverse. Now that he's out of office, this thing can come to light. Even a Washington Post reporter today said maybe we were too hard on Trump when he had suspicions about the laboratory. That is what has obscured this. Ideology has obscured the search for truth. Not the first time, and I suspect not the last time.
Britt, what are the implications for China? Let's say we get, it doesn't seem like the evidence is there, that perhaps it's been destroyed, but let's say you get down an investigation and it does prove that escaped from that Wuhan lab. What are the implications here?
Well, the one thing is that it becomes, I think, undeniable and more clear than ever that this is a rogue state. This is an outlaw state. This is not a member of the international community, as it is so fondly referred to by so many people nowadays. This is a nation that will suppress the truth, that will, fire, even maybe wipe out people who, in their own ranks, who try to tell the truth and so on. I think it becomes increasingly, therefore, difficult to do regular business with China. So I think it would be, quite a moment for that regime, in which we are so economically intertwined now. It would be a huge problem, and it would be, look, Mara said that it's a crazy theory that the Chinese did this deliberately. So far as we know, there's no evidence of that. But it hasn't been effectively, completely disproven. And the way China acts, I don't think you could completely rule it out. We need more evidence to find out what really happened, and I'm afraid some of it may be gone. We'll never see it.
Mara, last word.
Yeah, look, I agree with that, but it's going to be a black eye for China if it originated in a lab. It means they were lax, they didn't have the right protocols. It doesn't have to be something that China did on purpose. It will be a black eye for them if it originated in a lab. And that's what it sounds like. They're not a transparent country. They're an autocracy, and they're going to try to cover that up.
All right, panel, stand by if you would. Up next, the coast-to-coast crime wave here.